Aloha and welcome to another analysis. Today we have Hikaru Nakamura against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and it is the second day of the quarterfinals. The story to this game is also quite funny because Nakamura thought that he was eliminated after he lost yesterday to Lagrave. He lost the match. But it turned out he hadn't read the regulations and that he has a second chance to strike back and to win, technically win the match. If he manages to beat Lagrave, the games will turn into tie breaks. So he does have a second chance. Must be a good feeling, to realize that or to learn that you have a second chance when you psychologically think that you're out. So that clip cracked me up. But without further ado, let's take a look here at Nakamura against Maxime. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6. You may recognize this. d4 takes, knight f6, knight c3, and a6. So this is the second time we take a look at Najdorf together. The other time was against Nakamura. I can mention that Maxime is more of a hardcore Najdorf specialist. He is the absolute expert. You don't get better than Maxime in Najdorf. That's the way I'll put it. So it's not a shocker that he plays a6. I can mention that he did play knight c6 in the qualification stage, much to my surprise. But anyway, a6, Nakamura once again chooses bishop d3. So maybe bishop d3 is Nakamura's pet line. So Lagrave goes for the same thing as Nepo did with e5, knight e2, knight c6 from Lagrave, fairly logical, developing the knight. The knight could also go to d7, but if you're gonna go to d7, you want to play bishop e6 first, because if you go to d7 now, the bishop cannot go to e6. So knight e2, knight c6, castles, bishop e6. And again, the same plan from Nakamura, like in the Nakamura game. He wants to play f4 quickly and eventually knight d5 to avoid d5 from the black side. And here, Lagrave makes a very interesting choice. But, as a matter of fact, it's a very bad move. And that is the logical d5 move here. And maybe very bad is an exaggeration, but this makes things a lot harder for the Frenchman, as we are gonna see soon. A better move would be to simply play bishop e7 and wait with d5. It's a bit too premature, although in Najdorf it's said that if you play e5 and you get to play d5 as well, you're doing very well, but it turns out the d5 is just not very good here. Nakamura goes for bishop g5, pinning the knight on f6, and the d5 pawn is officially under attack, so black needs to make a choice whether or not he's going to play d4 or take on e4. Personally, I think that d takes e4 is what makes the most sense, and that's indeed what Lagrave does, but if he would have played d4, the simple bishop knight d5 here would have been very good. And one of the points here is that knight h5 could come, and then black is pretty much overloaded. So let's say that we take on d5, e takes, queen takes, bishop takes f6, pawn takes f6, and then bishop e4. This position here is winning for white according to the computers, and it is basically winning because of the amazing white square control of the white bishop. Also knight f5 could come, queen f3, and black has severe problems, especially with his king. So I think d takes e4 is better, and that is what Lagrave does. Knight takes e4, bishop e7. And one of the major issues here is that after bishop takes f6, it's not good to take with the bishop. And the reason is that knight h5 is the move that destroys everything for black. Black cannot move the bishop because the pawn on g7 will be hanging, which means that white is probably going to take on f7 next, or play queen f3 first, which is not very good. Even knight c5 could come in a few lines too. So this is very promising. So g takes f6 is more or less forced. Queen h5 from Nakamura, an important move, because you do not want to let black play f5. That is quite important to prevent, so that is why Nakamura plays queen h5, queen g7, queen h6. Well, I did just say that he wants to prevent f5, but f5 doesn't work because we can simply play knight f6 now. And this would be far too dangerous. For example, e4. Oh, the rook is hanging. Never mind. Then there's nothing to look at because we're attacking the rook and the pawn on f5. So castles is the logical choice, and Nakamura has won a pawn on f6. So Lagrave loses a pawn. It's not looking too good, but he does have some compensation. I mean, the bishop pair is always strong here. So maybe something like king b8 is not too shabby. And hope that you have enough with bishop f8 or whatever, but queen b6 potentially. Black is struggling, but it's not over yet. Lagrave plays knight d4. Rook d1 is a logical move. Bishop takes a2. And, well, you always wonder if it works. But in this case, I think b3 here is... I can't really see what you're going to do in order to prevent rook a1 and rook takes a2. How do you prevent that? Something like king b8. And after rook a1, you can simply take here. Yeah, that is a problem, because now you no longer have the pin after rook c1. So that is the point of king b8. But a better move would be then to simply play knight f5 or something. And a position like this would be very good, because rook a1 is coming next. Huh, very clever. But Nakamura plays knight f5, bishop e6, knight takes e7, queen takes e7, and well, the material is equal, but this is very good for white because of the fact that pawn on e5 is very weak, the king is quite weak, and c3 is gonna come, chase away the knight, and then bishop e4 could come. White just has excellent control of the center and the different squares. Rook e1, attacking the pawn. And all of a sudden, it takes on h7, which looks slightly strange, but it's very simple. There's nothing black can do in order to win back the pawn. Queen b4, b3, king b8, queen g5. It's looking pretty bad now for Maxime. He needs to watch out for just this h-pawn just running down the board. It's very hard to prevent. I can play bishop d3 and h5, h4, h5, h6, h7. And I can do it without any problems because I protect all of my weaknesses and black has nothing. So for example, rook d4, bishop e4, rook d8. Now I want to avoid the trade of rooks, so I'm just going to play rook c1, even threatening c3, queen c3, and boom, h4. And I'm going to play h5, h6, h7, and there is nothing you can do in order to stop me. So Lagrave tries king h8, but then h5, rook d2, and after bishop d3, he actually resigns. And it's not surprising because knight e4 is going to come, and the rook on d2 is going to fall. But he didn't really have any moves here. For example, rook h8 is always met by, for example, h6. And h7 will come next, and it's over. Queen g7 too. Just look at how well white's pieces are placed. They're just excellently placed, and the black has no moves. A beautiful game by Nakamura, who makes use of his second chance. Whether or not it will be enough to win the match remains to be seen, but at least he's back in the game, and I can't wait to see what happens next in this exciting match.